I can't build a company. I can't be on a podcast. I stutter. Any I can't story, any language of scarcity story is story. You capture a story and you ask, how is it serving me? Because
It's doing something.
It's doing something.
It's doing something.
Why is it there? It's aiming to keep us safe. If we could uncover how this story is keeping us safe, then we could decide what we want to do with it. And then we're able to show ourselves, I can be on a podcast. I can build a company.
In this episode, you'll learn what happens when you stop letting fear call the shots. My good friend Dan Greenwald shares his journey. As a 6-year-old kid, he knew something was holding him back. What he didn't realize was that his stutter would ultimately be the key that would unlock everything that he would become. It would also help him discover a system to help other people tap into their potential and break through the barriers holding them back. Dan takes us on a walk through his journey, going back to retrace the steps of his family, Holocaust survivors. He takes us through the idea that everyone's got a stutter. He shows us how he went from a kid with minimal talking, trying to say as little as possible, to becoming a master educator, and how the very things he struggled with became the credentials that empowered him to do so much of what he does today. We'll go through the background of how he built a system called 3010Zero, and you'll get some behind-the-scene insights of how Dan helped me build Transcending X. I'm excited to share this candid conversation with my good friend, Dan Greenwald.
All right. We're here. We're live.
Hey, hey.
We are Transcending X.
Transcending X.
So very few people know me as well as you, Dan. Been with on this project from the very beginning. A lot of credit to you. A lot of this wouldn't exist if not for you. So I'm excited. I think this is our 3rd episode together, and we'll be going a little bit behind the scenes. People will get to hear about where we come from, how it came together, what we're doing now.
Great.
And super excited and honored to have you.
Excellent. As you know, I love the time we get to spend. Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. For the audience sake, we'll keep it to an hour for today.
Okay.
But we'll
try.
It's hard for us, but we'll do our best. What would you want people to know about you? What's the intro to Dan Greenwald? Everyone knows on the outside, but what would you say? What would you want people to know?
You know, I'm someone who grew up with a stutter. Someone who, from a very young age, was really trying to figure out how to navigate forward. And the thing that I was thinking about before I came in here was I always knew that there was more to the life that I was living, even at age 6.
Mm.
I realized that at age 6, I had a stutter. It kind of set me on a journey of, it's not going to define me. How do I change me? How do folks change? Why do people change? That kind of set me, I think, that put me on some sort of path that I didn't even know I was on until probably, later in life. And looking back on that, I really been figuring out in this search for being in flow. And eventually, as we've talked about, it went beyond my speech and stuttering. And I realized that being in flow is not just for people who have a difficult time speaking, but for all of us. And that the path of a stutterer into how do people change? Why do people change? Turned into this hunt for how do all of us consistently live in quote unquote flow, as cliche as that sounds. But that's what I think I want folks to know about me.
You often say something, and you've said, and I always say, it's harder for me to say it, but you said, everybody's got a stutter. What does that mean?
Everyone has a stutter. What's your stutter? That's what it is. What's your stutter? What's that thing that stops you from being your most true, authentic, strongest self, that's there to tell you why you're not, why you can't, why you're living in a world of like scarcity? Everybody's got their thing. And so what's your stutter? Everybody's got their stutter. And that kind of dawned on me when I stopped thinking that all of the negativity in my life came from my speech stuttering. And I was like, wait a second. I'm so full of fear. I'm so full of fear of, speaking in like public. I'm so full of fear of shame. As a stutterer, you live, and I think most of us could know what it's like to be at that fork in the road of being true to yourself, or I want to avoid shame. What do you do? So it all comes back to there for me.
What does Dan look like? Younger Dan, driven by fear, acting out of whatever's going to keep him safe, playing smaller. And then what does it look like as you kind of grow out of that?
Sure.
I've heard you say you could pick any age and you have a memory. So take us through a couple memorable touch points of the childhood of Dan Greenwald.
Yeah. So when I give these talks, I ask folks to, pick an age, pick a grade, pick a whatever, especially for other folks or kids that are, like stuttering and in a place of not sure how to navigate forward. In all of my schooling, it was always a fear of, am I going to get called on? Right. It was always a fear of, can I read this out loud? And so there was always that element in school of, how do I stay safe? I also, when I would actually get stuck in a stutter, in a block, those that do actually stutter, they know that sometimes that block feels like an hour when it's like microsecond, but it feels like an hour. And so I was trying to avoid that at all costs. And so I got very good at thinking 12 steps ahead, circumlocution, it's called, in which you're thinking 12 steps ahead, knowing what words you could say, what words you don't want to say, what words are like something. So that was me for a big chunk of my youth. And I just have to say, like, when you grow up, and I think it's not just like stutterers, I think all of us go through the teenage awkward, who am I? What am I? I'm not like them. I want to be more like them. I want to fit in, or whatever. That's, I think, humans, right? All of us are like that. And so I was a lot just, can I just be normal? Can I just be normal? Can I just fit in? And so I made the stutter play a bigger role in who I was, good and bad, right? Good and bad looking back. And eventually, I realized that it was more about fear than it was my stutter. And I started to explore, what am I fearful of?
Well, give us like an example, like grade school, high school, give us one or two.
So
anecdotes.
Grade school. There was this one teacher I had, a rabbi. I don't want to mention his name. And so I think it was fourth grade. I know it was fourth grade. I know it was fourth grade. And it was my time to read and read like sentence, whatever. And I felt myself, and I could feel it now. I feel my, I would tense up, sweating. I would just try to make my way through it. And this teacher was like, come on, Dan, come on. And when I was done with that one sentence, the look on his face was one of like, I'm disappointed. There was a level of disgust. And I remember looking around the room and thinking, okay, how do I just be cool? There's a lot of those throughout my
And then you got to go back the next day.
and then I have to go back the next day. And then there was also somebody in 9th grade who's actually my science teacher, bio teacher. We got our test back. We're going around the room. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out, like to the bathroom, seeking safety. It's like, Dan, I got you. You got this. And I didn't like it at the time, but he made me sit down knowing I had a fear of speaking in class. And he's like, and I didn't like it then, but I really appreciated the fact that there was someone recognizing where I was, even though he really didn't know where I was, but he was just there to help me. I felt, looking back, that was an okay move. But I think a lot of teachers don't really know what to do, but that's a side note. Then I think like college, I had a lot of, throughout my entire life, I was doing a lot of self-work, really out of survival. I didn't know it was self-work. It was more out of survival. It was more of like, hey, sometimes I'm in flow, sometimes I'm not in flow. Why is that? I got to figure this out, because like that fork in the road it's to the point of survival, right? Shame is the ultimate pain. Like physical pain is one thing, emotional shame, and I think that's the case with everyone, right? But I had something, stutterers, it's very hard for us to hide it. For the first third of my life, that was painful. Also built up a lot of muscles, right? Also builds up superpowers for us stutterers. And everybody has a stutter, right? So that thing that you have, it's also building up your superpowers for all of us. We all have it. And so when I went into like college, and I was really committed to self-growth and really from a place of survival. It was a place of surviving. And it was along the road, you find these different teachers that I felt like got me, but also they would be like teaching things that were really important about the self, about I learned about Jung in my freshman year. That was so incredibly, it was so, like, there were the people you learn about, Emerson, Jung, the Besh, the Baal Shem Tov, Rav Kook, the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, who my like second son, his middle name is Keith. He's got he lives a certain way that is free, strong. It's just Keith Richards.
His bar mitzvah guitar rendition.
That was pretty good.
Channeling.
But I really got into this place of exploring and learning, and then I found that there were other like teachers and other people on somewhat of a similar journey, and and then I started the like process to transcend stuttering.
So as you pull on through to the other side,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to some of these influences, what do things start to look like? What's opening up as compared to some of those previous experiences of being driven by fear, like the self-work? It's one thing to read about it, it's another thing to live it.
Yeah. And Kant and these like moral, like moral imperatives, and like Emerson, that led me into the world of education. I was kind of upset that education, or the people, guiding me, so to speak, and that includes like speech therapists,
Yep.
teachers, they weren't able to really connect with me. It was outside in, not inside out. And
maybe even worse, contributed to like the concealing and the hiding, not just not helping you.
I believe people try to do the best job that they can.
You
And I
can
have
mean
zero
well.
fault
This is
about
really
it.
interesting because
Yeah.
like someone can mean well and still do harm.
Absolutely.
So you can have the best intentions, but the person on the receiving end, like if it's not landing for them, it can lead them into more hiding, concealing, shutting
Sure.
down, not believing in themselves, even if it came from the best place, best intentions.
Sure.
So the intention and the outcome has to be matched up. This is something that Hope Gerlach is looking at in her work. And she says that for a lot of adults who grow up with stuttering, but it's true for so many things, they report that where did they start hiding? Where did they start feeling crummy about just showing up as who they were authentically? Ironically, it started with speech therapy experiences, as ironic as that is.
Well, listen, there's also our worldview. All of us is formed between ages 4 and 12.
Very impressionable. So you go into education to kind of see if you could do better for others?
Yeah, I mean, I went into the world of like education really from a like Kantian moral imperative of like I was upset that the world that I came from didn't help me, didn't guide me, didn't get me. So I could either bitch about it, or if I'm all about now being true to myself, because I spent most of my first part of my life like grappling with it, and now I know the importance, I know the power of what it means to live my truth, one's truth. Okay, well, I guess I have to go and try to rectify some of the stuff that I went through. And that led me into the world of education and into like curriculum design. I'm a backwards design thinker, end game goal. How do we try to get there involving humans and the intrinsic motivation of us? And that's really put me into the trajectory as to who I am, what I do, as you know.
I consider myself one of your students.
No, please.
But if you think about it, you go back to work in education. You don't go back to the schools you went to. You go into New York City public schools, right?
So
what was it like to be a student in your class?
So let me just even back up for one quick second, which is a good story for here. So at the end of like college, I went on a trip. We went on a family trip to like Czechoslovakia to trace my mother's roots. Right, my mother was a like child survivor of the Holocaust, and my father, mother, brother, sister, and aunt. We took a trip back to where she like grew up, and eventually we were in Prague after, and then I met a friend there, a very close friend who really knew me, and I met up with her, and we were in this town square in June. It was sunny and hot, and I told her, I'm like, I got to deal with the stutter. I went to a point, I've grown to a point of being true to myself, and it's stopping me. I got to deal with it. I was ready. All of what it means. I hit the wall of enough. Somehow, she took out a paper with 4 names on it, right there.
In Prague.
In Prague. And one of them was someone who was running a month-long intensive for teens. I was 22, and I had to convince her to let me in. And I went through this month-long intensive, and I was so determined. And that was when I learned how to deconstruct and reconstruct a huge part of myself. Like, like physiologically, breathing, speaking, and also psychologically. And came out of that month, and I was determined to not have stuttering stop me ever again. And a week after that, I got my first job teaching 4th grade in the public school, Washington Heights. Right? 4th grade, District 6. Why was there I got the job the day before the first day of school. Why was there a job available? Well, this was not the best part of town. And it was made up of kids that had just passed or failed summer school. That was my class. And it was awesome. It was so hard. It was so hard. Probably the hardest job I've ever had, but it was awesome. I was determined to not fail that. And so one of my like mentors who really helped me, she goes to me at the end of the year. She's like, Dan, you know how I know you're really good at this? Because when your fourth graders were really upset with you, they would come into my office. They would like complain about this and that and this and that. And they never mention your speech, your stutter once. And it was so easy to do. I mean, I started my face off. I wasn't fully fluent. Now I'm like rather fluent. And I wasn't then, but I was determined. And that still rings, that regarding this quest of figuring out how does one be in flow, such a huge part of it is finding your groove, finding what you could do, finding when you're in your zone. And for me, teaching, guiding, being a part of other people's growth is where I'm in my zone. And so that was a big part of, my story and education. And now I think the work I do now is still part of the education world, right?
We're going to get to that.
I'm just saying.
Seeing the backstory is so helpful. I think you talked about it being an enough moment. Like you hit rock bottom, or like, I'm not going on like this when you were in the square in Prague.
Yeah.
What do you think led up to like that being that moment? Like what was the straw or that thing that tipped that moment? Because it sounds like it was a nice family trip.
Yeah.
In Europe, like what led up to that? And also like, I don't know, revisiting your mom's story of resilience and survival, or what do you think brought you to that moment?
I was really determined. I spent a big chunk of my life avoiding being true to myself because I wanted to avoid shame. I wanted to stay safe. The role of staying safe is inherent in us as like creatures, but I didn't know that at the time. I was more focused on me. And throughout my like college experience, I really uncovered what it means to be true to myself. As like cliche as that might sound, for me, it's not. And because I did grow up with that constant fork, true to yourself, avoiding shame, I was determined that became my flag, the like Revolutionary War flag of true to myself, almost like Kutzker, right? And I realized that in order to live like that and to like continue living like that, I needed to deal with my stutter, and I was willing to do everything in my power to do it. And it wasn't just about me. It was about letting go of being safe, of needing to be safe. I wanted something more than that. And I really believe that when we come to a point of when we could let go of letting go of needing to feel safe, and we want something else more that's kind of connected to being true to who we really are, the world kind of brings the people the opportunities to help like support and even like catapult you.
You mentioned the Rebbe of Kutsk.
Yeah.
He has a famous line. He says, where is God? Not here, not there. He's where you let him in.
Absolutely.
And like all the good stuff that we really want is not going to come if we're putting so much energy into holding on to the old stuff to stay safe. And we're so busy with so many things. We're filling our time. We're consuming our energy. So it sounds like, on the one hand, everyone should be safe. You can't, put yourself at the precipice at the edge of a cliff. On the other hand, you got to be ready to get a little bit uncomfortable, because if you really want something, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? The good stuff comes on the other side. What were the things that you wanted or started to pursue that you weren't pursuing before, and then bring you to what you're doing today?
Sure. Well, two things regarding what, like the Rebbe of Kutsk and the idea about like staying safe. It's kind of natural for all of us to want to stay safe. It's just who we are as like creatures. Not good, bad, it is what it is. And then what often helps keep us safe is the idea of like ego, right? And ego plays an important role, but sometimes when it plays a role of keeping us safe, along the lines of what you were saying, I've heard someone, I forget where I heard this from, but ego edging God out.
Ooh. Wow.
So just, like connect with the Kutzker, right?
Truth.
Just saying. And as far as, what was your question?
What were the things you started to pursue? You said like you decided I'm not going to continue to hold back.
Yeah.
Like I was. So like, what were things that you started to do?
Yeah. So
after that trip, after that experience?
Sure. Teaching, education, being able to be in front of people, but also knowing that, playing a role in not just like speaking, but also figuring out that, guiding people forward. That became a real love, passion of mine. I really, and now looking back, I have no qualms about it. I'm really incredibly like grateful that I could be a part of other people's growth. It's what I love doing. Growing up as a teenager, I thought I was going to have to drive a truck. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I was a very good driver.
Not a lot of talking.
Not a lot of talking. So there was a big shift for me.
Truck driver, classroom teacher.
Yeah, like classroom teacher. Then it turned into then like like education was great, loved it. Also didn't I like the formal aspect of education. Then I got a job. Then I got a job at a like private school overseeing this like Jewish studies department of a Reformed Jewish day school, which was fascinating and amazing. And a real gigantic challenge from a very young age. How much God is too much God. But that was also a great experience. And while I was doing that, I was also doing some like real estate work and, navigating the world of money. And eventually I stepped out of the classroom and I started doing, like work around helping to build things. I like building things. Same thing, like curriculum, kind of the like blueprint for end game goal, building things, same thing. And I started doing consulting work around ed tech projects, education technology stuff, and like human dynamics. And so did that for a bunch of years, loved it. Projects, work with larger companies. And then as I was also doing that, I kind of created a system for me and like personal growth, because that's really what the key is. I mean, at the end of the day, the real key for people to feel fulfilled, happy, power, being in flow is when we know our growth, experiencing our growth. We have goals, we have targets that we aim to hit. Those are awesome when we hit them. But as many of us know, you hit them and now what? You feel happy, but it's kind of fleeting. It's, knowing that we could be a part of like continued growth. That's where being in flow comes from. That's what I've learned over the years. And so I created a system for me before it was termed anything. And while I was doing this work consulting, these two guys, really smart guys, I was helping them build out revamp their vision. They saw that I had this system in which you get a weekly score guiding you for what it is that you want. And, like the 30-10-0 system before it was called it. They're like, I want that. Forget about this business. Can you do that for us? I'm like, really? Like,
So you built it for you.
yeah, it was my own
Operating
system. It was my own it was my own like guidance system, in which it's all about having what's most important in my front and center, no matter what's going on around me, and kind of organizing different core key tasks on a weekly basis that lead to a weekly score that I could see how well did I do, showing my growth.
You know how transformative that can be. It was for me.
Yeah.
One of the really powerful things is story watch.
Sure.
Another is the courage muscle.
Sure.
Can you just give us a short overview?
Sure. So, you know, you're talking about this concept 30-10-0. And the idea is, you know, it's the idea of like identifying your like 30,000 foot view of what it is you really want, not just the generic air is good stuff, but what do you really want? That's the like driver for us. The reason why it's so hard for most of us to figure out what it is that we really want is because we're these like humans with this human mind, heart. How do you navigate all that? And so over time, the tools in order to figure out what it is that we really want is how do we harness our self-awareness? So there are 3 different ways of harnessing our self-awareness that I share, I guide, I you know, and one of which is like other 3 tools: energy farming. We are in control of the energy we engage waking life with. Dictates everything. What do I need to do that supports my mental, spiritual, and physical health? When one is weak, our overall energy state's going to be weak. And when that's weak, everything feels like we're going uphill, no matter what it is that we try to do. That's number 1, energy farming. Number 2, story watch. The mind creates stories that drive us, right? Like beliefs. So what if there's a way to use the self-awareness to capture the stories before they turn into action? And story watch, when I work with folks, a lot of people say this is the most powerful tool because it helps identify what's standing in our way. It's only a story that was formed between ages usually 4 and 12, showing up in different experience, clothed in different experiences now, but it's designed to drive us to stay safe.
What are like popular stories people are running around with?
I can't build a company. I can't be on a podcast. I stutter. I can't story. Any language of scarcity story is story. And stories are not good or bad. They are what they are. So it's the idea, story watch is you capture a story and you ask, how is it serving me, right? You know, I know you know. How is it serving me? And the answer, if it's not, is never an answer, right? Because it's
doing something.
It's doing something.
It's doing something.
Why is it there? It's aiming to keep us safe. If we could uncover how this story our mind creates is keeping us safe, then we could decide what we want to do with it. Then we could even see, oh, it's here again. Oh, it's here again. And then we're able to show ourselves of like, wait, I can be on a podcast. I can build a company. I can reach out or speak to or do whatever we think we can't do. That's, I believe, is someone's weapon. I think it's our greatest weapon. Story watch becomes a weapon for anything standing in our way. And then the third tool, energy farming, story watch, and then the third tool of self-awareness, and they all work in 3, is this idea of a like courage muscle, which is everyone's default mode is, what should we be fearful of? What should I be on alert for? Especially in a world of media, and today it feeds that, right? It feeds the news. What should be scarce? What should I be fearful of? And so I thought, instead of trying to change that, how do we actually use that? How can we actually harness that? It's a big part of stop trying to change. Let's try to use, take who we are and really use it, utilize it, harness it. So the idea of a like courage muscle, when we identify a fear, we say immediately the mantra,
Fear
fear
equals opportunity.
Fear equals opportunity. We say it. The reason why we say it, we could redo our mind, program our mind that when we're in that fear, oh, opportunity, what do I want to do with it? Each time we intentionally lean in to that fear, we should also write it down. We got to get it out of our head. We intentionally lean in, we build another strand of our courage muscle. Literally. Not literally, but literally. Literally. And the idea there is that the more we do that, the bigger it gets. And like any other physical muscle, runner, any other physical muscle, the more we work it out, the more our being craves it. So the more you work out your like courage muscle, it ensures your momentum of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So energy farming, story watch, and like courage muscle, you use all three of those together. Then you're able to define what it is that you really want.
You know, you look at kids, we look at our own kids.
Yeah.
We're both dads. I often like to say I'm imperfect dad number one, you know,
Yeah.
imperfect parent number one. I don't have all the answers, but I certainly have learned a lot of lessons, and it's good to have friends to talk to about parenting.
Sure.
Not to do it alone. Obviously, we have partners, but also to talk to one another. And one of the things that I think about a lot is I tell my kids, like, the number one subject or the number one skill is problem solving. We're all going to face problems. And this subject, this class, doesn't really matter what the subject is. What's most important is the skill of problem solving for life. And so the courage muscle is like being able to, number one, depend on yourself, that you're stronger than you think.
Sure.
And secondly, being able to be human and not just be like a trigger response. Like being able to hit pause, make a choice. What do I want to do with this? I'm getting a feeling, I'm getting a vibe. What do I want to do? What do I really want on the other side? And I remember once you gave a presentation. I think we traveled to Austin together, and you spoke about this 4th grade kid that needed to read in class, and he was kind of a little shaky about it, had a stutter. Could be anything, by the way. It could be dyslexia. It could just be a kid who's a little bit shy. He doesn't like to be heard. He doesn't like his voice to be so loud. Going around the room, and you said, you know what? When it comes to your turn, why don't you just like introduce it and be like, this is a fear, and this is me flexing my courage muscle. And that would set the stage, and this kid would be elevated among his peers instead of kind of put down. So just yesterday, I told you before we recorded, I gave a talk for like 80 speech therapists from New York City in the public schools. And afterwards, one woman, Rachel, she comes up to me. She says, you know, I have a stutter, and I want to thank you. Got some things from the talk. But most of all, I wanted to tell you, you know, I became a speech therapist because I had a stutter. And I didn't get the kind of support that I would have wanted. And this year I got my first student who stutters. I've been working with kids with all kinds of different things. This kid has a stutter, and he came to me, and you know what he told me? Just like I had a hard time in my experience at school, she said, when it came my turn to read, now he's coming to me and asking me, what do I do when it gets to be my turn to read? It's so hard. And like to go from that place of trauma, that place of fear, that painful memory, and being able to turn it around for someone else, or being at least able to understand. You know, the greatest compliment that I get from people who stutter is like, you stutter, right? I don't.
Yeah.
So how do you get it? Or when I work with people in finance, it's like, well, wait a second, you don't have a background in finance. How do you understand? But if you listen, or you take your own life experiences and you extrapolate and say, like, there's something here that's common. Maybe some of the language is different, but there's a common experience. It's a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
And reprogramming the courage muscle, story watch. A recent spin on story watch that I was thinking about was I was on a podcast and the guy was saying, you know, storytelling is the most important tool. It's the most valuable thing. It's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And as you like to say, it is what it is. Not good, not bad. It's powerful. The story that we're able to tell about ourselves and how we bring ourselves to the world and tell our story, very, very important, very powerful. There's also the story we tell ourselves in our own heads, which can actually be very detrimental and very limiting. It serves a purpose, but the story we grew up with when we were a teenager in school, in the early school years, might not serve us well anymore. It helped us then, but it's time to revisit it. It's time to see how we stay safe today for the life we're living today and not be living the same as we were when we were in high school or grade school.
Exactly. I mean, I would even go into say, a quick bit about like story watch and how it actually works is that when you identify a story you have, right? We all have them. Then you also assign a theme to it, a thread, we call it a story thread. And so self-doubt is one, right? We all have it. And it shows up again and again and again, clothed in different experiences, whether I'm 16, I'm 48, I'm 32, whatever it is, it shows up again and again. And to recognize that, oh, it's this story showing up again, that's really where the power is, right? So the more you engage in story watch, the better you get you better get at it. And it becomes a superpower, to your point, not just when you realize it for yourself, but you start seeing and hearing other people's stories driving them. It could be used in all sorts of different ways, but you just understand it better. You understand why and how and where folks come from, why people do what they do. When you start recognizing other people's driving stories, beliefs, all the same thing, it's story watch.
We talked about naming the podcast and naming the whole framework that we've developed.
Yeah.
And we jammed on that a lot.
Yeah.
We went around on it a lot. And at some point it was transcending stuttering. Now we're morphing into transcending X. What does it mean to you to transcend X? And in your case, maybe stuttering, but whatever you want to go with that. We've talked about the double entendres, but it's been a couple months.
Yeah.
How do you relate to transcending X?
So there's going to always be things in life as a human. There's going to be things that are going to come up and they are going to be there to try to keep us safe, i.e. stopping us from being in a place of growth. It happens, doesn't matter how much we have or don't have, how old or young we are. That's the way of everyone. And so the idea of like transcending, it's a key piece of staying in a place of growing. There's going to be different things that we're going to try to transcend. Sometimes we don't even know what we need to transcend, but when we do the work, eventually we're going to see, wow, I'm not there anymore. It doesn't stop me anymore. Wow, I'm over here. I never thought I could be over here. And that's what it's about. To me, that's what it's about. It's about transcending X. It's about staying in a place of growth. And while that might feel hard and we want to take a break from it, if we commit to living a life of growth, of consistent growth, transcending X is going to naturally be a key part of it.
Yeah, I think about, as you say that, about not being stuck, moving, growth. My brother has a line, motion is lotion. Motion is lotion. And when we're standing still, things stagnate. And when we're moving, things are flowing. Good things can happen. You get to certain things, whatever that X is, if it's a stutter, if it's self-doubt, if it's your body image, if it's your feeling of imposter syndrome, whatever, it stops you. It feels like an impenetrable barrier. And the transcending part is, you get through it, you look back, you're like, wait a second, I'm not supposed to be here. My story tells me I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm here. How'd I get here? Oh, wow. Not only did I pass through that wall, but that wall might have elevated or been a catapult, and grappling with it and getting over it and getting through it got me to this higher ground or this spot on the other side. What are your thoughts?
I would even say that you don't even know that you go beyond it until you're way beyond it, and you could look back. Example, stuttering for me. I stopped making stuttering the end all be all in my life.
What does that look like?
Meaning, I think I was in my 20s, my late 20s into my 30s, in which I was committed to explore fear over stuttering. And my courage muscle came directly out of stuttering, right? I decided an intentional, I'm going to stop thinking about stutter as my end, as the core source of all my scarcity and negativity in my life. And I started exploring what I'm fearful of. And just by doing that again and again, and also, you know, having meditation and a lot of other things, it's a lot of other things, right? Following passion, following, you know, a lot of things that we living. I eventually went on with my life as we do, right? And then there was a moment. I was like 30. I was 30. Yeah, I was 32, 33 maybe. I was already married. And I remember thinking, like, wow, stuttering, it really doesn't play a role in how I think about what I do or how I live on a daily basis. And for the first 20 years, 25 years, maybe, it was baked into my life. That's an example of when I transcended stuttering. When it's not playing the role. It's not going to dictate who I become. I could still stutter. It's not all about being in fluent. But what ends up happening is that all that work, when you we talked about it before, when you let go of the piece that forms your identity. Stuttering is a big part of my identity. And I was able to and it took years to eventually do, but a lot of the work that I've been doing and I do is about deconstructing and allowing people to choose, what is your identity? It's a story that was formed when you were 7. When people see that, they're like, they could shift pretty quickly, as you know.
Yeah.
And so that's about the transcending. And then just one more thing that becomes interesting, because it's not just like, okay, story. People are more fearful of what life now looks like because they don't have their brown couch, right? This concept of the brown couch is, everybody's got their brown couch. They're like raggedy, nasty, spring's coming up, brown couch. Everyone loves their brown couch because it brings them their like comfort, right? But when that brown couch, the idea is that when we can let go, it's letting go of the stories keeping us who we are, identity formation. Now what? People inherently want to feel certain, like certainty, uncertainty. Oh my God, even though it's like, you don't stutter, dude. What do you like? It's so the fear comes back in, which is why you need courage muscle, which is why you need all of these other tools working that allows for us to define our 30 for what it is that we really want, when our being, our way of the world is telling us, you can't do that. So it all works hand in hand, but that's always fun.
The brown couch reminds me of, I think about shoes, you know, like brown shoes. You got a pair of shoes, very comfortable. I think you got me into the Flyknit Nikes.
Yeah.
They're great. They're great. But for some reason, my toes start popping out. Do you ever have that? Like at some point they wear down? No, it's my foot structure, whatever.
Not a good fit.
Not a good fit. But I love them. Even though it's not a good fit, I love them.
Yeah.
But at some point it's starting to get a little awkward because like the toe is popping out or like some water's leaking in. Not the Flyknits, they're not waterproof. But you know, you got an old pair of shoes, time for a new pair of shoes. So you go to the store, you try on a new pair. Everyone says they're great. The salesman says it's great. You try it on. You even buy it. You take it home and you're getting blisters. You're like, I just want my old shoes. Even though my toe's coming out, they're familiar. They're familiar. These are unfamiliar. But everyone knows that once you wear the new shoes for a little bit, they stop being so unfamiliar. They stop being so new. They become the new familiar.
That's right.
And so the initial fear is like a good indicator.
Yeah.
You're doing something new. And as long as you're not getting hurt, it might be a good signal. And the other thing that you taught me was, or you say a lot, you say now stuttering is just one light on your dashboard.
Yeah.
And that I think as you were talking about what transcending meant to you, it's like at some points in our lives, our life is run by this one thing, this one signal, this one thing we have, this one indicator on our dashboard. And as we go forward and as we grow and as we transcend whatever it is, it's there, but it's one of many. And you decide like which indicators you pay more attention to, you give more weight, and which you give less weight. Like you don't think about checking your air pressure as you're driving on the highway. But if it comes up, like that's something you'll pay attention to. But otherwise it's in the recess of your mind.
Absolutely.
You're more interested in, am I going in the right direction? Am I still going where I wanted to go? And like some people get off a highway to avoid traffic, and before you know it, you've gone way off course.
That's right.
Gotta stay on course.
That's right. And I mean, I would even add to that in this year, like 2025, this time right now, it's a very chaotic time in the world, right? And a lot of people are feeling, uncertain about what's, where to go, what to do, how to do it, who am I, right? It's how do I fit in the world that's evolving AI? It's a lot of people are like suffering right now. And something that I find myself saying right now is that the least safe thing is to try to stay safe right now. It's important to be able to explore new. And there's the idea, they say it a lot in like companies, but it's the same thing with like humans. We're either growing or dying. That choice is ours. It starts with our mindset. We're in control of our mindset. Then we could do the things that support our mental, spiritual, and physical health. All the things that I laid out.
Another thing that I learned from you is being mindful of our state.
Absolutely. Energy state. So there are things that I do to keep my energy strong and also to be aware when my energy is tanked or low. I'm careful not to think too much, not to make any decisions, because anything I do, it's going to be stinking thinking. It's not going to be strong, and it's not going to be the way I want to think. Sleep on it. Wait till tomorrow, just like you would with an email when you're emotional. Don't hit send. Just write it, save it, let it out, and then see tomorrow if it still feels like you want to send it. 9 times out of 10, you're not even going to send any message. Yep.
You do bird watching.
Love bird watching.
Tell me how bird watching plays into you being in your prime state.
Sure. So let me break it down.
Or anything. What are the different quirky things?
I'm happy to speak birding.
That Dan Greenwald does that people wouldn't think of.
Here
we are in Soho, and you're bird watching.
I do have my like monocle in my bag. I don't want.
Okay, just pause for station identification. Monocle versus binoculars. When would you use one or the other?
The like binocs are in my car. They're bigger.
Binocs. That's binocs.
They're in my car. You get a bigger, more in depth. You could see the birds better with like. There's this brand called Nox, NOCS. They're awesome.
They make monocs and
also like binoculars. Yeah, they're great. And so there's one. It's just I'm all about efficiency and easy, and so you have one, and then you also have an app, the like Merlin birding app, which
you told me to download. It's massive, but it's incredibly effective. You can listen to the chirp, and it gives you a number of ideas of what it might be. What's your location based on that, and the chirps, or a couple other features.
And then it also keeps your life list. But back to what you're asking.
What's a life list?
All the birds you've seen. Come on,
I'm not
when you see a new one, it's called a like lifer. Any day I have a like lifer, it's new on my birding list. No matter what's happening, it's a great day.
Amazing.
Active resting is a big part of like energy farming, and I'm all about systems, as you know. 3010Zero.
A lot of terms. Active resting.
I'm going to back up for a second. I'm a systems guy. We rise and fall by how good our systems are, right? James Clear's line. And so all of what I'm saying, 3010Zero is the overall, it's an overall guidance system that we create based on who we are right now. We don't have to be anything that we're just who we are, and we create a system that helps support our energy farming, like energy state, all these different things to help move us along. Energy farming, a big part of energy farming that I lean into is this idea of active resting. It's called the specific actions that when I do them gives me a inside out recharge. I try to do them 3 times a week. And I know what happens when I do them 3 times a week versus the weeks I don't do them because I measure all this and it's part of my scoring system and my weekly guide. And so one of my 4 actions, active resting actions, is birding. And the reason why birding, what it does for me is that when I go out birding, and I'm very careful, I have a timer because I could go all day, but it hones my senses, sight, hear, right? Different times of year, the migration is starting now. It's pretty exciting, right? You have the migration from the south to north, and
Coolest thing is seeing those massive Canadian geese walking on the West Side Highway.
Those are cool. Yeah, fine.
Those
fine.
are on my checklist.
Got it. Okay. They're everywhere. Almost an invasive like species, but those guys are huge, powerful, that fly, and they're cool. But for me, when I get to connect with another creature, birds, I'm honing my senses. I'm getting out of my own head. I'm fulfilling that intrinsic, hunting desire that we have without killing anything. And it helps me be more in tune with who I am as a creature, which allows me to get out of my own way. And so that's what like birding does for me. And it's also something you could do anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. So that's what it does. The other actions for me, active resting, is live tunes. Love seeing live like music. Gives me, any like Grateful Dead related stuff, but blues, that does it for me. Cooking. I love to cook. And being outside, hiking, biking, mountain biking. I try to do 2 or 3 I try to do 3 of those a week. Some form. For like birding, I just, I could schedule a walk for like 20 minutes, drop my kids off at the bus, go walk, check that box. Fulfills me. It energizes me.
And it's also small wins, especially when life feels like an avalanche, when life feels like an impossible mountain. There are a few small things you could do if you wake up a few minutes earlier, or if you just squeeze in a little micro walk during your lunch break or whatever. It's very doable things. There's nothing more life-giving than being out on a trail run and like running across some wildlife. It's like reminds you of nature and like the world goes on. And like when it feels like if I don't do this and there's 10 things on my checklist, like the sky's gonna fall. And then you see these animals. It's like they're still here. Like they're surviving. There's some animal power. There's some creature power. And you often say every creature has its creature power.
Absolutely.
And I think like the Torah says, like we are in the Torah and throughout the Bible, it says we're similar to many different creatures.
That's right.
So which one is it? So I think the answer is we have all the creature powers inside of us. We don't just have one. We're not like just one trick or one superpower. We have all these powers and we just got to tap in and bring them to bear in the right situation.
I mean, yes, I would say that our creature power, I think every animal has its unique creature power. Think about any animal. You could think about its unique creature powers. Ours is self-awareness. And in schooling, we've never been taught how do we harness our self-awareness? We should. It's very important, especially in like today's reality in which we live in this attention economy that's designed to suck our focus, tell us what we should or shouldn't feel, especially in the face of what we're not. We need to hone our self-awareness. And that's what those 3 things, are designed to do. And then when we could do that, right? The world's it's really complicated right now. It's not designed to help us, right? We live in this attention economy that the best of the best minds are like creating ways to,
hook us.
Make a lot of money off of our like dopamine addictions. There's this, epidemic of people feeling alone.
Yeah.
It's that, how do we, to your point, life feels huge, overwhelming. How do we navigate forward? Well, simplify. We are all the same. All humans are the same. Start there. Deconstruct. And we slowly reconstruct. right? The stories in our mind, energy, courage. That alone shifts anyone forward, anyone. And then from there, when you could define what it is you really want, your 30,000 foot view, we've spent a lot of time at this, and it's part of like Transcending X, which as you know, I'm so incredibly excited about, because it's not just about you, it's about you doing you the way that you do you, and it impacts other people.
And that's, when you talk about the attention economy and you talk about self-awareness being our creature power.
Yeah.
It's the ability to get into our minds, to have more mindfulness, but also helps us get out of our head,
Absolutely.
and those stories that hold us back. And one of the most powerful things to do in a time where tech and companies and everything that we're dealing with are grabbing our attention, we shouldn't lose the incredibly valuable opportunity to connect with each other.
Have to.
Everyone feels alone, but the greatest energy giving thing, in addition to birding and active resting and all the other things that people need to do, is like connecting with people and having conversations about the hard stuff and talking about the fears, and whether it's with a friend or a spouse or a coach, whatever it is. And we both know what that's like on both sides, is so powerful. And I think stuttering, what's really interesting and striking is that for so many people, it's a conversation stopper. And on the other hand, when you start talking about it, it's a conversation starter, and it brings people together and gets people talking more. So as we're coming to the end, what would be some final thoughts? And I always like to ask, like, what would you wish you could tell your 12-year-old self?
So, okay.
You could take as much as you want on that.
So I would say to everyone, especially Dan, who's 12, you're stronger than you think, which is what my mom would say when she would give a talk about her, like story. She would start off and look at everyone and say, you're all stronger than you think. That's something that we all need to know. That's number one. Number two, we're not as complex as we think we are. We're not. We all are in the same boat. We're all kind of navigating similar things, clothed in different, but it's the same. We're all the same. We forget that. That's what I would say. And I just would, figuring out a system that allows you to live your truth, not having to be someone you're not. That's where the real power comes from. That's what we need in our world. We need more people living from a place of inside out drive versus thinking that the world outside of them is going to dictate who they become. That's not good. That's what I would say.
Well, thanks for being that for me, bringing that out of me, and being a mirror, as you often say.
Yep,
being
people
a
act as
mirror.
mirrors.
I like to say, we got to figure out who we are, and self-awareness. And sometimes just sitting with yourself is really powerful, like the ability to just sit with yourself. And sometimes it's really hard to see yourself. Like you need a mirror, or you need a friend, you need a sounding board. And you've been that for me, and I'm so grateful and better for it. So thanks for coming back for another conversation.
Yeah.
And this is 3 out of I don't know how many, but we'll have lots more offline, and I appreciate you coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I love this. I love being a part of your growth, and you are definitely a part of my growth.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, share it with a friend. And if you want to get more tips and follow us for more insights, check out transcendingx.com/email. And remember, keep talking.